They said the drones were for community safety, but they hovered over my backyard every other evening. My kids couldn't play freely, and my wife felt watched. What I didn't expect, though, was the shocking truth behind the HOA president's secret side hustle. When I dug deeper, I uncovered an illegal operation, and what I did next didn't just stop the spying. It turned the entire HOA upside down. The eyes in the sky. It started with a buzzing sound. At first I thought it was just a neighbor's leaf blower, but the hum didn't fade, instead it grew louder, then eerily close, right above my backyard, where my kids were playing tag one Saturday afternoon. I looked up and saw it, a sleek black drone hovering like a mechanical hawk. It had a blinking red light and what looked like a small lens aimed directly at us. "What the hell?" I muttered, stepping outside and waving my hand. The drone shifted slightly, then flew off over the treetops. I didn't think much of it at first. Drones are common, maybe someone was just flying for fun, but then it happened again and again, always in the evening, always around our yard. Soon my wife Michelle started noticing it too. "This is getting creepy," she said one night, pulling the blinds shut. "It's like someone is watching us." She wasn't wrong. My daughter Emma, only 9, had stopped playing in the yard altogether. She said she felt like the sky was watching, and honestly, I couldn't blame her. I contacted the HOA and asked if anyone had reported drone activity. Nothing unusual, they said. But a week later I received a letter in the mail from the HOA. It was a violation notice. Apparently, our backyard patio furniture was misaligned and unapproved play structures had been spotted in our yard. Play structures? It was just a small inflatable pool and a swing set we'd bought secondhand, nothing permanent. And misaligned furniture, really? It was then I connected the dots. The drone was theirs. They were using it to spy on us. I was furious. I marched into the next HOA meeting ready to raise hell. The board sat behind a long table in the community clubhouse. Cold smiles, polished nails, fake concern. "Is it true," I began, "that this HOA is using drones to observe residents without consent?" The president, Harold Becker, a man in his late 50s with silver hair and a smug attitude, adjusted his tie and smiled. "Sir, all surveillance used is for the safety and security of our residents. We have every right under the bylaws." "Show me the clause," I demanded. They didn't. Instead, I was shut down, told my time was up, that if I had nothing further to add, I should leave. It was clear they didn't care about privacy or respect. They were in control, and they liked it that way. But I wasn't about to back down. Michelle and I began documenting every drone appearance. We installed our own camera system and tracked the time, duration, and path of the drones. It always started near the clubhouse and always ended behind the same house, Harold Becker's. Coincidence? I didn't think so. I decided to dig deeper into Harold's affairs, and what I discovered blew my mind. A search of local short-term rental listings pulled up a familiar address, Harold's. Not listed under his name, of course, but the pictures were unmistakable. His guest house, his pool, even the custom mailbox out front. The place was listed under an alias, H. Blake, with glowing reviews and mentions of no landlord present and total privacy. That was a big problem. Our HOA strictly forbade any short-term rentals or Airbnbs. The rules were ironclad, unless, it seemed, you were the one writing the rules. Suddenly, everything made sense. Harold was using the HOA's surveillance drones to enforce arbitrary rules and fine residents, while breaking the biggest rule himself. It was pure hypocrisy. But I wasn't just angry anymore. I was ready to make a move. This wasn't just about me or my backyard anymore. It was about the entire community, and someone had to expose the man behind the drone. The spy president's secret business. Once I realized Harold Becker was secretly running a full-fledged illegal Airbnb operation while weaponizing HOA drones against the rest of us, I knew I needed hard proof. Proof I could take public. Proof that wouldn't just get him fined, but dethroned, and maybe even arrested. Michelle and I spent that weekend gathering what we could. screenshots of the Airbnb listing, timestamps matching drone sightings, and footage from our backyard cameras. I even used a drone tracking app that showed an unusual number of flights originating near Harold's home, particularly from the clubhouse rooftop, which, strangely enough, had limited resident access. I decided it was time to pay a visit to someone who'd know how to handle this professionally. That someone? My old college buddy Darren, now an attorney and one of the fiercest I knew. I laid it all out for him: the drones, the harassment, the violation letters, and finally, Harold's Airbnb. Darren listened carefully, then leaned back in his leather chair. "This is bad," he said. "Not just the privacy violation, but the selective enforcement and the misuse of community property. Can I sue him?" "Better," Darren smirked. "We expose him." He suggested I attend the next HOA meeting and publicly raise the issue on record after sending a cease and desist letter. Then, once the board denied knowledge, which they would, we'd release the Airbnb evidence. If the media caught on, all the better. I loved the plan, but things moved quicker than I expected, because that very night I received another violation notice: unauthorized surveillance equipment installed on premises. They meant my security cameras. Harold was clearly trying to retaliate. "Okay," I told Michelle. "They want to play games? Let's bring the whole damn arcade." We mailed the cease and desist letter to the HOA board and submitted a formal complaint to the local zoning commission. Turns out, short-term rentals were illegal in our area unless specifically approved. Harold had done none of that. I then reached out to the local news channel with everything we'd found. A week later, the headline read, "HOA president accused of spying while running illegal Airbnb." The article featured clips of the drone over our backyard and screenshots of the listing. But that was just the start. The story exploded on neighborhood forums and Facebook groups. Residents who had kept quiet now came forward, sharing similar experiences: letters for unpainted mailboxes, grass 1 inch too high, kids' toys in front yards. Turns out, Harold had been running his little fiefdom for years, funneling HOA fines into unnecessary maintenance contracts handled by his brother-in-law's company. And the final nail? A whistleblower came forward, an ex-board member who admitted Harold had suggested installing drones to keep residents in line. This was bigger than I'd imagined, and it was time to confront Harold face to face. At the next HOA meeting, the room was packed. Residents who usually never showed up were lining the walls. Everyone had seen the news. Harold walked in with a shaky smile, clearly trying to look calm. I stood up and cleared my throat. "Mr. Becker," I said loudly, "do you deny using community drones to spy on residents while simultaneously running an illegal Airbnb out of your home?" The room went silent. Harold turned red. These are baseless accusations." "Then why," I held up a folder, "is your guest house featured on over a dozen short-term rental sites under your fake name? Why do our camera logs match your drone patterns exactly? And why," I leaned in, "do we have a signed statement from your former board member admitting you orchestrated the surveillance?" Harold opened his mouth, but before he could speak, another voice shouted from the crowd. "I got fined for letting my dog out without a leash, yet you're letting strangers party in your house all weekend?" Another resident chimed in. "You fined me for Christmas lights in November, but you're breaking zoning laws?" The meeting exploded. People shouted, some stood on chairs. The board tried to regain control, but it was chaos. Finally, someone called for a vote. Motion to remove Harold Becker as HOA president immediately. Unanimously approved. Harold stormed out, but I wasn't done. The next morning, I filed a formal petition with enough resident signatures to audit the HOA's finances for the last 5 years. And what we found? Shocking misuse of funds, overpayments to maintenance crews, lavish consoling fees, and thousands spent on drone equipment from a company owned by, you guessed it, Harold's cousin. Within days, authorities opened an investigation. Harold Becker wasn't just out of a job. He was under criminal review. And our neighborhood? It was finally free. But there was still one thing left to do, something I'd been planning quietly in the background. A surprise that would change the course of the community and give my family back the dignity we'd been denied. My rise, their fall. After Harold Becker's removal from the HOA presidency, our neighborhood was buzzing, relieved, energized, and angry. The audit had confirmed what many had long suspected. Harold had been treating HOA dues like his personal wallet, using fear, intimidation, and surveillance to keep us quiet. But now, he was gone. Still, the damage he'd caused was deep. The community was fractured, the trust was shattered, and the board was in disarray. We needed more than justice. We needed leadership. That's when my wife Michelle looked me dead in the eye one night over dinner and said, "You should run for HOA president." I laughed at first. Me? After all this? But she was serious. "You've already done more for this community in the past month than that man did in years. People trust you now, Nate." And just like that, the idea took root. The campaign. I didn't want to run on just rage or revenge. I wanted to build something. Transparency, fairness, communication. I laid out a simple, clear campaign. End surveillance practices without resident consent. Review and revise all violation policies. Freeze HOA fee increases for 1 year. Audit and replace all shady vendor contracts. Word spread fast. I hosted small backyard meetings, answered every question, and even live-streamed my proposals. By election day, the turnout was record-breaking. And I won. By a landslide. Cleaning up the mess. The first few weeks as president were a whirlwind. We dismantled the drone system, canceled Harold's cousin's overpriced contracts, and set up a resident-run financial oversight committee. Residents came out of their homes again, smiling, helping each other, even hosting community barbecues. But Harold wasn't done with us. He tried to sue the HOA for wrongful removal, claiming defamation and unlawful process. Too bad for him. We had airtight legal coverage now. The case was thrown out in under 20 minutes. Still, I knew he wouldn't stop unless he felt real consequences, so we worked with the city council to officially file code violation reports against his Airbnb operation, leading to hefty fines and a ban from hosting. Then, we reported the financial discrepancies from the audit to the IRS. Let's just say Harold had a lot more to worry about than drones now. The house he tried to control. There was something poetic in how this unfolded. The same man who used drones to violate our privacy and rule with fear was now under surveillance himself, but this time legally. Investigators combed through his tax records, business dealings, and HOA transactions. He lost tenants, then his job, then finally his house, when it was seized in a lien for unpaid back taxes. A for sale sign went up. Michelle and I stood across the street one morning sipping coffee and watching a new family tour the place. "They have a dog," she whispered, smiling. I nodded. "Let's make sure this place stays safe for them." Then came the big idea. The scandal had attracted attention outside our neighborhood. Other HOAs reached out, asking how we exposed the corruption and rebuilt the community. That's when Michelle said again, "You should teach others, share your experience." So we did. I created a free online guide, Surviving a Corrupt HOA, a homeowner's playbook. We ran live Q&A sessions, shared templates for audit requests, and even helped other homeowners start campaigns in their own communities. Within 6 months, our little suburb became a symbol of resilience, unity, and the power of one family standing up. But the story wasn't quite over yet, because there was still one secret left to reveal, one that would shock even me. A secret buried in Harold's final audit. One that explained why he was so desperate to hold on to power. And once I found it, everything changed again. 12. The power behind the power. 3 months after becoming the new HOA president, life in the neighborhood had transformed. The paranoia Harold Becker left behind had lifted. People laughed again, shared tools, hosted bonfires. The community wasn't just surviving, it was healing, but something was nagging at me. During the final phase of the audit, I noticed a line item buried in old digital documents, a payment made quarterly to a P.O. box in Nevada. It wasn't large, just consistent. $12,250 every 3 months, always marked as Operations Maintenance Backup Fee. Strange. I had never authorized this payment, and when I asked the board, nobody knew what it was, until I followed a paper trail. 12. A legacy of secrets. I tracked it through LLCs, shadow vendors, and old contracts Harold had written himself. Finally, it led to a name, Janice Becker, Harold's sister, a supposed silent partner in a fake maintenance company that never did any actual work. The HOA had been paying her, through Harold, for years. That wasn't all. Buried deeper was something even worse. Before I installed my generator and powered up the HOA's security, Harold had intentionally disabled the old system. Not because it was broken, but so residents would panic and rely on him for fixes and fees. He caused the blackout vulnerability, just to create the illusion of control. It wasn't just corruption, it was manufactured chaos, and I had unknowingly powered the very system he sabotaged. Confrontation and closure. I brought this new evidence to the board and the local authorities. Charges were extended to include fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. An arrest warrant for Janice Becker was issued 2 weeks later. Harold's legal team tried to distance him, but it was too late. His name was on every document. And as poetic justice would have it, the very security footage powered by my generator showed him signing papers he once claimed never existed. He was sentenced to 4 years probation, massive fines, and was banned from working with HOAs or property associations for life. Janice? She took a plea deal. Our neighborhood watched as the family who once watched us collapsed under their own secrets. Legacy. From revenge to rebuild. But I didn't stop at revenge. With trust slowly restored, we invested in solar panels on the clubhouse, a proper emergency preparedness plan, a new neighbor-to-neighbor support app, and a resident bill of rights that protected homeowners from overreach. The generator? Still running, still free, and now, its power extended to new uses, food storage during storms, communication hubs, even medical support for elderly neighbors during outages. What Harold used as a weapon became our greatest shield. One last interview. Local news ran a follow-up story. I was asked, if you could say one thing to Harold Becker, what would it be? I smiled into the camera. Thanks for showing me what power really means. It's not control, it's service. The clip went viral. Requests poured in to speak at homeowner summits, forums, and even community leadership programs. All because of a simple generator and the truth it exposed. Final line. In the end, it wasn't just about power going out. It was about who had the power and who had the courage to turn the lights back on. For everyone.